City, going to him 7 seconds early, which is both a gift and a sign of fraternal affection.
You caught me, my Marco Rubio moment.
What are you doing?
All right, we're gonna go back and tabulate the whole year, and I lose time. You're stealing it.
That is so false. It's
and if you say no, it's fake news.
It's totally fake
Tucker,
news.
thank you. All right, welcome to Hannity. A lot breaking tonight. Anonymous saboteur within the Trump administration trashing the president, a cowardly, gutless act, going after his agenda. We're going to get into all of this. It was published, of course, by the liberal, failing New York Times from a person claiming to be a senior employee in the executive branch. That could be hundreds of people. When we, get through this tonight, we're going to respond to this self-involved so-called super patriot, whoever he or she may be. We'll also call out the person's purely political motivations. You need to see this for what it is. We have damning new developments tonight surrounding the deep state and the conduit Bruce Orr, Hillary pays, Bruce Orr, let's see, Christopher Steele, and it goes right to Mueller's office. Pretty disgusting conduct in the lead up to the 2016 election. It is about to come crumbling down. Looks like Christopher Steele, paid by Hillary, direct line through Bruce Orr, right into Robert Mueller's office. You can't make it up. Also tonight, Democrats can see the writing is on the wall, bearing any unforeseen crisis. Judge Kavanaugh will be confirmed as the next U.S. Supreme Court justice. Another promise made by the president and kept. But for the past 2 days, the conduct on the left in this country, it has been downright shameful. A now known coordinated plot to interrupt the hearings dozens and dozens of times. Reports of paid protesters getting funneled into this audience. A combative political line of questioning, all designed to trip up, bork Judge Kavanaugh around every corner. And we're going to show you the worst of the worst. Plus, we'll expose the left in this country's pretty and petty political posturing. It's pretty ugly. Now, tonight, the media's obsessive-compulsive anti-Trump coverage is once again ramping up. In moments, we're going to take you on a journey tonight through the media's never-ending, they're ever-evolving, completely ridiculous, obsessively compulsive bias against the president. It's like, well, they're like drug addicts. And we have so much more to cover. Tonight's breaking news, jam-packed, opening monologue. All right, once again, the disgusting underbelly of the Washington, D.C. swamp and sewer and deep state is being exposed. This is a good thing. Now, as we speak, we have unelected bureaucrats all over our nation's capital. They have been and continue to work actively to undermine your 2016 vote. They all think they know better than you, the American people. They think they know better than President Trump. And tonight, one such bureaucrat hiding behind, of course, the veil of anonymity, almost everything is anonymous, bashing this president in a New York Times irresponsible op-ed, writing, quote, "I work for President Trump, but like-minded colleagues and I have vowed to thwart parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations." And it gets worse from there. We're going to spare you all the sanctimonious details, but here's how the president reacted earlier today. Take a look.
We have somebody in what I call the failing New York Times that's talking about he's part of the resistance within the Trump administration. This is what we have to deal with. And, the dishonest media, because you people deal with it as well as I do. But it's really a disgrace. You tell me about some anonymous source within the administration, probably who's failing and probably here for all the wrong reasons. No. And the New York Times is failing. If I weren't here, I believe the New York Times probably wouldn't even exist. So if the failing New York Times has an anonymous editorial, can you believe it? Anonymous, meaning gutless, a gutless editorial. We're doing a great job.
There's a truth there. The New York Times, Washington Post, fake news, CNN, conspiracy TV, MSNBC, the networks. When Trump leaves office in 6 years, they're going to decline precipitously. It's going to be fun to watch. Now, the president continued his response on Twitter. He wrote, quote, "Does the so-called senior administration official really exist, or is it just the failing New York Times with another phony source? If the gutless anonymous person does indeed exist, the Times must, for national security purposes, turn him, her over to the government at once." Now, tonight, we're asking the question, all right, who is this person? Where does this person work within the administration? It's potentially hundreds of so-called senior officials in the executive branch. Does this person have access to top secret information? Is there a national security risk? Now, of course, if he or she has a problem with the president, his agenda, they should quit immediately. But if they're going to undermine the president and it deals with intelligence, sources, methods, national security, what if the president was talking about potentially having to go to war against an enemy? Are they going to undermine that too? Now think about how profound and dangerous that can be, in spite of the gutless and cowardly hiding behind what is swamp attacks that we get every day. We've said this many times. Deep state actors, just like today's anonymous author, just one of the 5 forces constantly, never-ending efforts to destroy President Trump. This individual thinks their opinion, as a Washington bureaucrat, matters more than your vote, the American people that voted in 2016. Now, this person thinks they know better than all of us, the smelly Walmart people, the ones that are irredeemable deplorables clinging to our God, our guns, our Bibles, and our religion. That's what they think of us. On the bright side, the op-ed is a very good sign that the president is keeping his promise, and every day he's trying to drain this swamp and this sewer. And you see the swamp reacting this way. In the end, hear me out, this is great for the country because things need to change. And without a doubt, the good news is the president's keeping that promise. Yeah, he's draining the swamp. He's breaking China. He's challenging the status quo. He's reshuffling the deck. He's stepping on all the toes of all the good old boy systems that have always existed for them, not us, not we the people, those that prefer the good old days in Washington and their good old insider deals and their lobbying efforts. They're freaking out because they see that their power is slipping out of their hands. And whoever this anonymous super patriot is who wrote this anti-Trump hit piece in the New York Times, I would argue dangerously published, is nothing more than a swamp sewer creature who can't stand that there's a new sheriff in town. This means the president's effective. The anonymous source claims that the president's not a conservative and that he's attacked conservatism. Excuse me, the president's actions speak loud and clear. Look at the side of your screen. Let's see, record tax cuts. Oh, conservative originalists on the court, a real push for border security. Let's see, we've got the individual mandate gone, burdensome regulations on businesses gone, millions of people, 4 million off of food stamps, 4 million new jobs created, and I could keep rolling throughout the show. Real promises made by the president, more than any president in our lifetime, keeping his word. And let me speak directly to the author of this article, whoever you, he, she may be. You know, while you half acknowledge in the article that this isn't about you, let's be honest, it's all about you and people like you. And it's about your obsessive, compulsive hatred of one man, the president. You're supposed to have, if you go into that White House every day or any of the surrounding buildings, you are supposed to serve your country and the agenda that the American people voted for. President's sticking to his promises and his agenda. And when you say the president has a preference for dictators like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, well, he's imposed the strongest sanctions against Russia. Unlike, oh, Obama, I'll have more flexibility after the election. Tell Vladimir. Or North Korea, let's see, hostages are returned. Oh, the remains of American soldiers returned. No missiles fired over Japan. Oh, and we're talking about denuclearization of the entire Korean peninsula. So whoever you are, on top of everything else, you're a liar. So reveal yourself, come on the show, have some guts, be courageous, instead of hiding behind an anonymous column, you know, kind of like the Woodward book. It starts out, I can't, this is all deep background. Nobody's going to reveal themselves, but I taped it. Release the tapes. Let's hear them. Let people identify themselves. Either way, this is where you, the American people, need to come in on this. This needs to be a wake-up call. You need to understand the swamp and the sewer of D.C. is desperate. It needs some serious draining. The president can't do it all on his own. And it's not going to happen in 62 days if Nancy Pelosi becomes the Speaker of the House. If the Democrats take back control of the House, we know they want to impeach the president. That effort will be in full effect just this week. But to the Democrats, the swamp creatures, this is all a political game. All they care about is power. And power to them is impeaching and getting rid of President Trump and stopping what is his successful track record and agenda. And you got, of course, their best allies, the mainstream media. They are the propaganda wing of all things Democrat. They're acting as the devout extension of the Democratic Party. They want the president impeached. And, of course, tonight's anti-Trump media obsession is one every single day, surrounds the New York Times op-ed. Every day, crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis. Here's today's crisis. Take a look.
Anonymous hit in a stunning new op-ed in the New York Times.
Now, this op-ed in the New York Times, written anonymously.
An anonymous op-ed.
An anonymous person wrote this.
The senior official has written an anonymous op-ed.
This anonymous op-ed.
An unprecedented op-ed from an unnamed current Trump administration official.
An anonymous op-ed.
Who wrote this? Anonymously.
It's anonymous.
An anonymous.
Anonymity. Anonymous op-ed.
All right. Meanwhile, earlier this week, the abusively biased press, okay, they were on a completely different anti-Trump topic. That day's, well, crisis was Bob Woodward's new book. Oh, filled to the brim with rumors, speculation, hearsay, and tons, matter of fact, in his own words, hundreds of anonymous sources. Here was the earlier crisis in the week. By the way, what day is today? Wednesday. Not that long into the week. Take a look.
Bob Woodward's explosive new book, Fear, undeniably gripping the White House.
All talking to Bob Woodward.
This book from Bob Woodward.
According to Woodward's reporting.
Bob Woodward.
Woodward.
Bob Woodward.
Woodward. Bob Woodward.
Woodward.
Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward.
There's really a full court press to try to push back against Bob Woodward's book.
The Bob Woodward book.
Bob Woodward.
Bob Woodward.
Woodward. Bob Woodward. Woodward book.
Woodward.
Bob Woodward.
Then we read it in the Bob Woodward book.
All right, what you just saw are two of this week's examples of the media's obsessive, compulsive hatred of the president. It fits their long, disturbing pattern. Members of the press every day wake up obsessively echoing each other's talking points. Crisis du jour, crisis to crisis to crisis. You might remember some of these breathless, well, we'll call them classics. Take a look.
A dizzying 24 hours in the Russia investigation.
Russian.
Russia.
The Russians.
Russian.
Russians. Russian government.
Donald Trump has turned the Oval Office into a hole.
Holders built this country 110 years ago.
Whole comments.
Whole countries.
Hole.
House.
Do you think these countries are
Every hour that passes, we get more from Michael Wolff.
I read this book, and we're going to talk about it.
This book, Fire and Fury.
Michael Wolff.
Author Michael Wolff.
Michael Wolff, his new book.
Michael Wolff.
The Stormy saga takes a dramatic turn.
Stormy Daniels.
You had a he said, she said between the president and Omarosa.
Omarosa Manigault Newman.
Omarosa.
Manigault Newman.
Omarosa Manigault Newman.
The likelihood of impeachment, I'm not saying it's high necessarily, but it certainly went up.
Is itself an impeachable offense?
Consider something as serious as impeachment.
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 They're all sheep. You know, they're like drug addicts. I mean it. Every day they need to wake up hating Trump about something. And they're also sheep. They all echo each other. It's an echo chamber. And I got to be honest, it's a sick obsession. Where do they ever talk about the success of the president? Greg Jarrett has had the #1 best-selling New York Times book in the country. So has Judge Jeanine Pirro, #1 in the country. We've exposed more corruption on this show, the biggest abuse of power scandal. When do they ever talk about that? Yeah, we're #1 in cable. Thanks to all of you. We don't ever take that for granted. We'll have a lot more in the media. And brand new, by the way, anti-Trump op-ed in the New York Times. First, we have to cover a damning news story surrounding Bruce Ohr. Pay close attention. House Freedom Caucus Chair Mark Meadows formally requesting the DOJ, the Inspector General, investigate Bruce Ohr's seedy ties to Christopher Steele, Andrew Weissman. That's right into Robert Mueller's office and other FBI investigators. Big news tonight. Catherine Herridge, we now know Steele and his phony dossier that not even he believes was fed to Robert Mueller's pit bull, Andrew Weissman. And, of course, the conduit, Bruce Orr. We know that Bruce Orr, once the fourth-ranking official, highest-ranking official in the DOJ, maintained contact with Steele even after the FBI fired him for lying and leaking. And we know that Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie, oh, yeah, she worked at Fusion GPS. They're the ones that got the money from Hillary and the DNC, funneled through a law firm. And that Orr literally formally failed to disclose any of this. And meanwhile, according to a breaking report from Judicial Watch tonight, it appears that corrupt, fired FBI agent, Trump hater Peter Strzok, actually authored the first draft of the FBI's letter to Congress about the Clinton emails found on Anthony Weiner's laptop, which proves his critical role in, yes, Hillary's exoneration without investigation. We'll have more on that also in a moment. We do have some good news on the investigation into FISA abuse. New reports, Sarah Carter, President Trump may declassify 20-plus pages of FISA documents that have been people have been begging to be released. These documents should shine a very important light on how the dossier was used to lie and commit a fraud on a FISA court, which we've been breaking. And by the way, who knew what when? Hi, Rod. How are you? And remember, Clinton paid Fusion GPS with money funneled through the law firm. Then they hired a foreign national. I thought that was bad. He put together the Russian dossier, Russian lies that he didn't even believe, and literally just hates Trump. Or the ongoing contact, feeding Trump, hating Steele's Clinton paid for Russian lies right into Robert Mueller's office, right into the arms of his pit bull, Andrew Weissman. It's beyond sick. It's beyond corrupt. We'll have more of that in a minute. And we'll also be getting to day 2 of the Kavanaugh hearing in case you missed the long hours of testimony. Joining us now, he is himself the author of a #1 New York Times bestselling book. Yes, there it is, The Russian Hoax. Yeah. Greg Jarrett, congratulations. The illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. Joe DeGeneva is with us. Sarah Carter, investigative reporter, is with us. Good to see you all. Sarah, let's start with the news. It's now literally Bruce Orr, Christopher Steele are creeping right into Bob Mueller's office. The ever so ethical Andrew Weissman. How interesting. We've talked so much about him.
Oh, and, you know, Bruce Orr, all of these revelations came from the emails and notes that Congress was able to obtain because of their oversight authority to find out what was really going on. And all of a sudden, here is Andrew Weissman once again. Before he joins Mueller's team, he's in communication with Bruce Orr. He's head of the crime fraud division, and he knows everything that's going on, Sean. And he's relaying that information, obviously, to somebody else. This is why Congress wants an investigation. This is why Congressman Meadows sent a letter to Attorney General Jeff Sessions demanding that John Huber, the prosecuting attorney, and Inspector General Michael Horowitz investigate Bruce Orr, his connections with his wife, that conflict of interest, his communications with Andrew Weissman. And
what about declassifying these documents, which I hear Go ahead.
Yeah, this is even bigger. According to a number of sources that I've spoken with, and President Trump himself actually told this in an interview yesterday, that he said that they are seriously considering declassifying the 20 pages of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant that have been redacted by the DOJ. I call these Rosenstein's FISA. Why? Because Rosenstein signed off on the last FISA, and that's critical. These are the 20 pages of the Carter Page FISA that they do not want to come out. And why? Because there is information in there that there has been a fraud perpetrated on the court, on the secret court.
And the fraud would be the FISA warrant was it. That's all they had. Now, let me go to Joe DeGeneva, and then we'll get to Greg. This now, if that is in fact true, the next question will be, did they ever make an effort to verify or corroborate? I think the answer will be, at best, limited and no, which means that they purposely committed a fraud on 4 FISA court judges, that they politicized the Department of Justice and the FBI. Where do we go from there, Joe?
Well, see, here's the problem. It's fairly obvious that a fraud was committed on the court. All of this evidence is there. There isn't any doubt about it. So the question is, why isn't Huber conducting a grand jury on this? He was supposed to be looking at this in Uranium One. Well, in Uranium One, he didn't even interview Doug Campbell, who is our client, Victoria's client. The bottom line here is we cannot trust the department under Rosenstein, who, by the way, no longer he's got a big problem with FISA personally, and that's under investigation.
He signed the last one.
Yeah, but it's worse than that. He's now under investigation, and he can't do FISAs anymore. The bottom line is this: Rosenstein.
Joe, he's under investigation.
Rosenstein is under investigation for things that involve the FISA warrants. And here's the key thing. Sessions is out of all of this. He can't do anything. So where are we in the department? We have a mess of such proportions that there is nothing that can be done about it. I do not trust at this point that the Inspector General, who has no subpoena authority, is going to be able to get to the bottom of this. He is, in fact, right now investigating Rod Rosenstein's role in the FISA warrant process. So Rosenstein can't have anything to do with the FISA process
you know that
anymore.
Joe, I had not confirmed that myself. Sarah, have you?
No, I have not confirmed that. I have heard that.
Joe?
Bottom line is, you know, we all talk to people, and that's what I know, and I'm happy to say it. It's a tragedy for where the department is. The department is in very bad shape right now. It is in free fall. Sessions is completely disengaged from this. It is a travesty of immense proportions. Wow. And here's what we have to do. Congressman Meadows' request is very important. He deserves all kinds of medals for pursuing this. What we need to do is the members of Congress from both the House and the Senate need to demand that there be a federal grand jury investigation to all of the FISA processes, to everything that was done around it before the election, and everything that was done in it after the election, which involved lying to the FISA court. This is now so dangerous to the country that this could be going on. And with that editorial today in the New York Times, that's subversion. What you are reading in the New York Times editorial is subversion, that someone thinks that they can thwart an election.
The president must declassify these 4 sets of documents that Congress has been asking for, is entitled to, and the American public needs to see. If he does that, this will expose a level of corruption that by the government, the FBI and the Department of Justice, in targeting Donald Trump that will stun the American people. The president is being misled by the intelligence community. Maybe it's the DNI, maybe it's the FBI director, but I guarantee you that the information they claim is classified is not truly classified or top secret. If they order a pizza,
it doesn't have anything to do with,
it should be classified and top secret.
So you are hearing what I'm hearing, what Sarah's hearing, and now Joe's taking it to another level. This will destroy.
It will. It will exculpate the president and incriminate the people at the Department of Justice and the FBI who used false intelligence knowingly to target the president of the United States to undo the election results.
Wow. Thank you all. Unbelievable night. Stay with us, though. We have an exclusive interview. Trump's former attorney, John Dowd, has a lot to say. That's straight ahead as we continue. Former attorney for President Trump, John Dowd, is with us. John, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Sean.
Let me first go to the Woodward book. We now have you on record. We have General Kelly. I think he has 4 stars, right? 4?
Yes.
General Mattis is 4 stars?
Yes.
Pretty impressive.
It's very impressive.
All coming out. In the case of you, what you said is you want to be clear. What is written in this book about the so-called reenactment or a mock interview with the special counsel's office, you never referred to the president as a liar, did not say that he was likely to end up in an orange jumpsuit, that it was an honor and a distinct privilege to serve President Trump. What does that mean to you if something that you say is totally fabricated is in that book?
Well, that's what it is, and that's what it appears from the testimony of other people.
Yeah. And I assume that bothers you.
Well, it does. It's very disturbing.
Yeah.
But it seems to be common these days, Sean.
You were on Fox and Friends, and I saw the interview, and you said, with all due respect, you lost all respect for Bob Mueller. He didn't keep his word. He should have declined this case back in November of last year. And he's the one that asked for the witnesses. He's the one that asked for the documents. You know, everybody told the truth. He told us he didn't need any more documents. Here we are a year later. Thoughts?
Well, I meant it. I mean, it was his suggestion. Did you have any problem with those witnesses? They were all well represented, all well prepared, and he said no. Did anyone lie to you? No. Documents, we gave you 1.4 million, but more importantly, we gave you the most intimate notes of the communications and deliberations by the president. No president in history has ever done anything like that. Are we missing anything? Are there any missing documents? No. You're satisfied with everything you got? Yes. I said, well, what's the president's exposure? Well, the president's exposure is he's a witness / subject. I said, so he's not a target, correct? Correct. That means he had no exposure. And at that point, we said, well, why don't you just decline? He said, well, we'd like to get back to you on that, but we think we need to talk to the president. And I raised the ESPY issue, which we had briefed thoroughly. Jay's people did a magnificent job on the briefing on all of those issues.
Let me ask you this.
And we said, what do you not know that we have not given you, that only the president knows? And he could never answer that question, Sean. And that's when I saw a stall going on, and I just lost complete faith in him because we had shaken hands. He's the one that said, John, we'll engage. We are ones, we said, we're not going to raise conflicts. We're not going to raise the legality of the order. We're not going to fool with all this nonsense. Let's get the job done. This president wants the job done. And by the way, the president gets the credit. He's the one that said, give it to him.
Well, John, let me ask you this. You gave 1.4 million documents. Don McGahn, the White House counsel, I was shocked to hear he gave 30 hours of testimony here. You said he made these promises, but in retrospect, looking at the people that Mueller hired, all these Democratic Clinton-Obama donors, Jeannie Ray, who represented the Clinton Foundation, Andrew Weissman, who has an atrocious track record, do you now regret believing him?
I regret relying on him because he didn't keep his word. And I believed he would keep his word. But more importantly, the way we did it completely protected the president. We've not waived executive privilege. We've not had 4 years of litigation. We've not had motions to quash grand jury subpoenas. We've not had anybody go in the grand jury, Sean. Yeah. There is no case there. And that's what Bob Mueller ought to face up and do. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a very sad thing to see. And then you see the other cases. I mean, you see the Flynn case and the other case, and it's more of this sorry, abusive practice in the prosecutive ranks.
Wow, powerful commentary. Don Dowd, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. When we come back, Ed Henry, full report, day 2, Kavanaugh hearings. Also, Senator Ted Cruz is with us. Busy night. Stay with us. The second day of Judge Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination and confirmation hearing. Joining us now with the latest from Washington, D.C., the swamp, the sewer that it is. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry. How is it in the smelly sewer tonight?
Well, it's a little bit humid here tonight, Sean. And I can tell you, though, things are a little bit better for Brett Kavanaugh. The president edging closer to a major victory tonight as the judge has largely been sailing through his second day of confirmation hearings to be the second justice the president will get on the high court. The proceedings were repeatedly interrupted again by protesters, apparently paid to disrupt. People waiting online to sit in on the hearings are saying they have seen others get paid cash to wait online and then cause trouble. But largely, that has been just noise. It's done nothing to stop Kavanaugh. So now Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer is under fire. 13 liberal groups today signed a letter castigating him for not getting more Democrats to publicly oppose Kavanaugh. The president today lashed out at all of that, wishing Kavanaugh well, saying he's doing a great job, and saying the Democrats' approach can be summed up in one word: resist. And the president also slammed the New York Times for taking this rare step of publishing an anonymous op-ed from someone claiming to be a senior Trump administration official, writing he works from the inside to undermine the president by blocking what he believes to be erratic decisions. Listen.
If the failing New York Times has an anonymous editorial, can you believe it? Anonymous, meaning gutless, a gutless editorial. We're doing a great job. The poll numbers are through the roof. Our poll numbers are great. And guess what? Nobody is going to come close to beating me in 2020 because of what we've done.
The president went on to charge this as treason. He's on Twitter saying the Times should turn this government official over to the government. The fact is the president and his aides are furious not just about this basic leak, but also that Bob Woodward book, and they're fighting back tonight, Sean.
All right, Ed Henry in Washington, thank you. Here with more reaction to today's hearing, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, good to see you. What we've learned is this was all planned, all orchestrated. They had a big call Labor Day. First they thought about walking out, then they said, we'll do this. I don't think it hurts in any way for the American people to see the left for who they are.
Sean, I think that's exactly right. I think yesterday and today were both really good days. They were good days for the country. They were good days for Brett Kavanaugh. In 2 days of hearings on the Judiciary Committee, the Democrats have not laid a single glove on Brett Kavanaugh. There's been a lot of screaming. There's been a lot of protesting. There's been a lot of anger. And it's really the reflection of the incredible rage and fury we're seeing on the far left. And you're right. By all appearances, these protests are closely coordinated with the Democratic senators. Indeed, yesterday, Senator John Kennedy asked about this conference call between Democratic senators and the protests to disrupt the hearings. And Dick Durbin, the Democrat from Illinois, he jumped in and said, yep, we had a conference call, and he didn't dispute that it was a coordinated effort. You know, yesterday, 70 people were arrested. But at the end of the day, the rage, the anger they're having, they haven't been able to give even a single argument that is going to derail this nomination. No Democrat has disputed that Brett Kavanaugh is qualified to serve on the Supreme Court. And they're just really expressing the rage of the far left to Donald Trump. They're mad that Trump won in 2016 and Hillary Clinton lost. And I think come October, we're going to see Judge Kavanaugh become Justice Kavanaugh. And that's a great victory for every one of us who cares about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and our fundamental liberties.
You know, I'm reading the Washington Post tonight as a result of this, this anonymous, frankly gutless, disloyal New York Times piece. But they're actually talking about the sleeper cells have awoken of the resistance. And I'm thinking there's something extraordinarily dangerous if unelected swamp creatures think that they have the authority to undermine the president from within. What if the president's talking about national security? What if he's talking about maybe going to war? What if he's talking about intelligence, sources, methods? While the media is celebrating tonight, I'm thinking there's a great danger that exists.
Well, look, at one level, this is nothing new. With every Republican administration, there are Democrats that are burrowed within the administration that have fought against good and positive policy for the country. At another level, it has been much, much worse under the Trump administration. We've seen the deep state. We've seen Democrats coming out of the Obama administration deeply politicized who are fighting the president on every front. You know, in many ways, it's remarkable the victories we've seen. We've seen an historic tax cut, the biggest tax cut in a generation. We've seen regulatory reform, job-killing regulations pulled back. We've seen the Obamacare individual mandate repealed. As you know, I led the fight to make that happen in the Senate. Nobody thought we'd get it done. We got it done. And we've seen on judges an enormous victory, not only Neil Gorsuch, but we're getting ready to have Brett Kavanaugh, and we've got principled constitutionalists up and down the federal bench. There are people throughout the administration burrowed in that are fighting against all of that. But the American people are seeing the results of these victories. We're seeing it in incredible job growth and economic growth.
It's interesting because you had a tough primary with the president. And really, you have emerged as one of the strongest allies in advancing every part of what I would argue is his conservative agenda. And the president says it. And I think he's doing a big arena, maybe the biggest in Texas, I read, for you. Tell us about how that relationship has evolved and how I know for a fact how much he's relying on you in the Senate.
Yeah. Well, the president and I have worked hand in hand since the day he was elected. We obviously had a vigorous primary in 2016. It was hard fought, but the primary is over. And as you know, the week after the general election in 2016, I got on a plane, I flew to New York City, and I spent 4.5 hours with the president and his senior team. I said, Mr. President, this is an historic opportunity. It is rare to have control of the White House and both houses of Congress. We can't blow it. And I think the 4 big domestic priorities were tax cuts, regulatory reform, Obamacare, and judges. And I told him that day, I said, I want to do everything humanly possible to lead the fight in the Senate, to deliver on our promises. And I got to say, the level we're doing it is enormous. And let me just finally say to your viewers, go to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. We got a big fight in the Senate. We're being outraised 2-1. We need your help.
Well, Senator, I know you've been a strong conservative, a strict constitutionalist all throughout your career. In spite of what the media is praying for, I know the people of Texas appreciate what you're doing there. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Sean. Take care.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll come back. Dr. Gorka, Gina Loudon, new book, as Hannity continues. Straight ahead.
Did you have any problem with those witnesses? They're all well represented, all well prepared. And he said, no. Did anyone lie to you? No. Documents, we gave you 1.4 million, but more importantly, we gave you the most intimate notes of the communications and deliberations by the president. No president in history has ever done anything like that. Are we missing anything? Are there any missing documents? No. You satisfied with everything you got? Yes. I said, well, what's the president's exposure? Well, the president's exposure is he's a witness / subject. I said, so he's not a target, correct? Correct. That means he had no exposure. And at that point, we said, well, why don't you just decline? He said, well, we'd like to get back to you on that, but we think we need to talk to the president. And I raised the ESPY issue, which we had briefed thoroughly. Jay's people did a magnificent job on the briefing on all of those issues.
Let me ask you this.
And we said, what do you not know that we have not given you, that only the president knows? And he could never answer that question, Sean. And that's when I saw a stall going on, and I just lost complete faith in him, because we had shaken hands. He's the one that said, John, we'll engage. We are ones, we said, we're not going to raise conflicts. We're not going to raise the legality of the order. We're not going to fool with all this nonsense. Let's get the job done. This president wants the job done. And by the way, the president gets the credit. He's the one that said, give it to him.
Well, John, let me ask you this. You gave 1.4 million documents. Don McGahn, the White House counsel, I was shocked to hear he gave 30 hours of testimony here. You said he made these promises, but in retrospect, looking at the people that Mueller hired, all these Democratic Clinton-Obama donors, Jeannie Ray, who represented the Clinton Foundation, Andrew Weissman, who has an atrocious track record, do you now regret believing him?
I regret relying on him because he didn't keep his word. And I believed he would keep his word. But more importantly, the way we did it completely protected the president. We've not waived executive privilege. We've not had 4 years of litigation. We've not had motions to quash grand jury subpoenas. We've not had anybody go in the grand jury, Sean. Yeah. There is no case there. And that's what Bob Mueller ought to face up and do. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a very sad thing to see. And then you see the other cases. I mean, you see the Flynn case and the other case, and it's more this sorry, abusive practice in the prosecutive ranks.
Wow, powerful commentary. Don Dowd, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. When we come back, Ed Henry, full report, day 2, Kavanaugh hearings. Also, Senator Ted Cruz is with us. Busy night. Stay with us.